September 14th, 1891. Early morning mist clings to the surface of Blackwater Creek like a burial shroud, thick enough to taste. The water runs cold and dark, stained by centuries of pine needles and mountain runoff, moving with the slow, deliberate current of something that knows secrets, but refuses to speak them. It's a local fisherman, Thomas Ridley, age 47, weathered hands and sun-damaged skin, who makes the discovery that will haunt this place for generations. He's been coming to this creek since he was a boy, knows every bend, every pool where trout gather in the shallows. But this morning, as his boots sink into the muddy bank, as the fog parts just enough to reveal the creek bed, he sees something that doesn't belong. Metal, brass, glinting beneath 6 inches of rushing water. At first he thinks it's trash, maybe a belt buckle lost by some careless hunter. But as he wades into the creek, as the icy water seeps through his worn boots and the cold bites at his ankles, he realizes what he's looking at. A badge, United States Park Ranger Service. The 5-pointed star design, unmistakable even beneath the water's distortion. Then he sees another, 3 feet downstream, then another, and another. By the time the sun burns through the morning fog, Thomas Ridley has counted 22 badges scattered along a 30-yard stretch of Blackwater Creek. 22 brass stars, each one etched with a different number, each one belonging to a different man. All of them lying at the bottom of the water like fallen soldiers on a battlefield no one knew existed. The badges are still shining, still new, as if they were placed there yesterday. To understand what happened in the autumn of 1891, you have to understand what the American wilderness was in those days. This wasn't the mapped, photographed, Instagram-ready nature we know today. This was something older, something that still had teeth. The Greystone National Reserve, what we now call Greystone National Park, covered over 840,000 acres of uncharted mountain territory in the northern Rockies. Established just 3 years earlier in 1888, it was one of the first federally protected wilderness areas in the United States, created in response to rampant logging and mining operations that threatened to strip the mountains bare. But protection on paper meant nothing without enforcement on the ground. That's where the park rangers came in. 22 men, recruited from military backgrounds, frontier lawmen, and experienced woodsmen. Their job was simple in theory, nearly impossible in practice. Patrol the vast wilderness, prevent poaching and illegal logging, maintain the few rough trails that existed, and, perhaps most importantly, keep track of the growing number of travelers who ventured into the backcountry and sometimes never came out. The reserve was isolated in a way modern minds struggle to comprehend. The nearest town, Milner's Junction, sat 18 miles from the southern boundary, a 2-day ride on horseback through terrain that could turn lethal without warning. No telegraph lines reached into the interior. No roads, only game trails and paths carved by rangers themselves. Communication with the outside world happened through monthly supply runs and occasional messenger riders. In the summer of 1891, 7 people had gone missing in the reserve. Hunters, mostly. 2 prospectors. A family of 4 passing through on their way to Montana. The rangers had found 3 bodies, exposure, falls, 1 bear attack. The others simply vanished, swallowed by the wilderness as if they'd never existed. There were whispers, even then. Stories the local Shoshone wouldn't quite finish telling. Talk of areas where compasses spun uselessly, where horses refused to go, where the trees grew in patterns that hurt to look at too long. Old-timers in Milner's Junction spoke of the reserve as cursed ground, built on something that predated human memory. The rangers dismissed it as superstition. They were practical men, after all. Men of science and reason, products of a modern age that had conquered a continent through sheer determination. That confidence would prove fatal. Captain James Holloway, age 39, led the ranger force. Former cavalry officer, served in the Indian Wars, decorated for valor during a skirmish near the Powder River. Tall man, 6'2", with a thick mustache that he waxed every morning without fail. a habit from his military days. He had the kind of face that inspired confidence, strong jaw, clear eyes the color of steel, a voice that could cut through wind and panic with equal ease. Holloway ran his ranger station like an army post. Inspections every morning, equipment checks. Patrol schedules posted on a board in the station house, each route carefully planned, each team assigned specific sectors. He kept a leather-bound journal where he logged every incident, every mile traveled, every observation about the reserve. That journal, along with everything else, would disappear. His second in command was Marcus Webb, 32, a contradiction of a man. Educated at Yale, studied natural sciences, came west not for adventure, but for research. He wanted to catalog the flora and fauna of the reserve, to understand the ecosystem. Thin, bookish, with round spectacles that he constantly cleaned with a piece of cloth he kept in his vest pocket. The other rangers teased him about his college degree, but they respected his knowledge. Webb could identify animal tracks in conditions that would stump most hunters. He could predict weather changes by watching bird behavior. He knew which plants could save your life and which ones would kill you in hours. Webb had a nervous habit. He'd tap his left index finger against his thumb when he was thinking, a rapid percussion that got faster when he was worried. In the weeks before the disappearance, according to later testimonies from supply runners, Webb had been tapping constantly. Then there was Samuel Bear Kowalski, the oldest ranger at 53. Polish immigrant, came to America as a child, grew up in the northern woods. Massive man, nearly 300 pounds of muscle and experience. He'd been a logger, a trapper, a guide for wealthy hunters. He knew the wilderness the way other men knew their own homes. Bear didn't talk much. He had a stutter that embarrassed him, but when he did speak, everyone listened. He carved. Always had a piece of wood and a knife, creating small animals, faces, abstract shapes. His bunkhouse was filled with wooden figures, an army of carved witnesses. After the disappearance, someone would find his latest carving abandoned in the station house, a human figure, surrounded by trees, with no face, just smooth, blank wood where the features should have been. The younger rangers looked up to these three. Men like Thomas Green, 24, eager and idealistic, who'd taken the ranger job because he genuinely believed in conservation. Or Elijah Marsh, 28, quiet and deeply religious, who read his Bible every night by candlelight and saw the wilderness as God's cathedral. Or the Cordova brothers, Miguel and Carlos, 30 and 26, who'd grown up in the mountains of New Mexico and knew how to survive in terrain that would kill softer men. 22 men in total, 22 names on the roster, 22 families who would spend the rest of their lives wondering what happened. The patrol was routine. That's what made everything that followed so incomprehensible. September the 1st, 1891. Captain Holloway had organized a full-force sweep of the northern sector, a region that hadn't been thoroughly checked since early spring. Reports had come in about illegal trappers working the area, and there were concerns about a group of prospectors who'd entered the reserve 3 weeks earlier and hadn't emerged. The plan was straightforward. 22 men would split into 4 teams, each taking a different route through the northern mountains, converging at a predetermined point. Cedar Ridge Station, an unmanned emergency shelter located roughly at the center of their patrol area. The sweep would take 5 days. They carried enough supplies for 7, standard safety margin. Holloway, Webb, Bear, and 3 others formed the command team. They would take the central route, the most direct path. The other teams would flank east and west, covering more ground. Before they left, something strange happened. A Shoshone elder named Gray Morning appeared at the ranger station. He was ancient, no one knew exactly how old, and he rarely came down from his home in the high country. He spoke to Holloway in halting English, mixed with Shoshone phrases that the captain couldn't understand. The conversation was witnessed by Deputy Ranger Michael Foster, who would later be one of the few men who could testify about those final days. According to Foster's statement, Gray Morning told Holloway not to go north, said the mountains were speaking wrong. said the animals had abandoned an area near Iron Peak, and when animals run, men should follow. He mentioned something about the stars, about constellations appearing in the wrong positions, about the night sky looking sick. Holloway thanked him politely, dismissed it as folklore. Scientific men didn't make decisions based on stargazing and animal behavior. They had jobs to do, territory to cover. Gray Morning left without another word. He would be found dead in his cabin 3 weeks later, apparently from natural causes. But those who prepared his body for burial noted something disturbing. His eyes were open, and his face was locked in an expression of absolute terror, as if he'd seen something in his final moments that violated everything he understood about the world. The Rangers departed at dawn on September 1st. Foster watched them ride north into the pine forest, 22 men on horseback, pack mules carrying supplies. Professional, prepared, confident, the last anyone saw of them alive. September 6th. The patrol was due back. They didn't return. September 7th. Foster sent 2 riders to Cedar Ridge Station. The riders came back the next day, confused and shaken. The station was empty. No sign of any ranger team. No messages left. No indication anyone had been there at all. The logbook, which was supposed to record every visit, showed the last entry from April. September 9th. Foster organized a search party. 15 men, including himself, carrying weapons and supplies for a week-long search. They followed the planned patrol routes, looking for any sign of the missing rangers. They found nothing. No camps, no tracks, no evidence that 22 men and nearly 30 horses had traveled through the area at all. It was as if the forest had erased them, except for one detail. On the 3rd day of the search, near a place called Widow's Point, one of the search party members, a young man named Peter Voss, found something that made no sense. A ranger's hat. Holloway's hat, specifically. Voss recognized it because of the distinctive leather band, custom-made in Denver. The hat was sitting on a flat rock, perfectly placed, as if someone had carefully set it there. It was bone dry, despite 2 days of rain, and there was something inside it. A compass. But the needle wasn't pointing north. It was spinning, slowly, clockwise, never stopping. Foster collected the hat and compass, logged them as evidence. Continued the search for another 4 days, pushing deeper into the territory than was safe, checking every valley, every ridge, every possible location where the Rangers might have taken shelter. Nothing. The wilderness had swallowed them whole. Which brings us back to Thomas Ridley, standing in that cold creek on September 14th, holding a handful of badges that belonged to dead men, or missing men, or something worse than either. The creek was miles from any planned patrol route. There was no reason for the Rangers to have been anywhere near it. Blackwater Creek sat in a remote valley that even experienced outdoorsmen avoided. The terrain was treacherous, the area prone to flash floods, and the local wisdom was that nothing good ever happened there. Yet here were their badges, all 22 of them. When Foster arrived with a team to investigate Ridley's discovery, they searched the creek thoroughly. Found nothing else. No bodies, no equipment, no clothing, no horses. Just the badges, scattered in the water like someone had stood on the bank and thrown them in one by one. Foster collected each badge, noted its number, matched it to the roster. Every single Ranger accounted for. He placed them in a leather satchel, and as he did, he noticed something that made his hands shake. The badges weren't weathered. They weren't corroded or damaged, despite sitting in running water for nearly 2 weeks. They looked new, polished even. As if someone, or something, had been taking care of them. That night, Foster sat in the ranger station, those 22 badges spread across Holloway's desk, catching the lamplight. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the smell of coming snow. The first storm of autumn. He opened Holloway's journal, hoping to find some clue, some explanation. The last entry was dated August 31st, the day before the patrol. routine observations about weather, animal activity, supply levels. But there was something odd about the handwriting. The last line, written in Holloway's normally precise script, seemed hurried, almost frantic. "Webb insists we're being watched. I told him it's his imagination. But tonight, for the first time, I think I believe him. The tree line looks different, darker, like it's moved closer to the station while we weren't looking." Foster closed the journal, looked at the badges, looked at the darkness pressing against the windows. 22 men had ridden into the wilderness. 22 badges had returned. But the men themselves? They were gone. And in the mountains to the north, in that vast expanse of pine and stone and shadow, something waited. Something that had taken them. Something that might still be hungry. September 21st, 1891. 7 days after Thomas Ridley's discovery at Blackwater Creek. 2 men arrive at Milner's Junction on the afternoon train from Denver. They stand out immediately, city men dressed in dark suits and bowler hats, carrying leather cases that look expensive and out of place against the rough timber buildings and muddy streets of the frontier town. Federal Marshal William Garrett, 45 years old, has the look of someone who's seen things he wishes he could forget. Deep lines around his eyes, a scar running from his left ear to his jawline, souvenir from a knife fight in Kansas City. He's been a marshal for 18 years, worked cases from train robberies to political assassinations. He's seen men do terrible things to each other. But he's never worked a case quite like this. His partner is younger, greener. Deputy Marshal James Chen, 29, first-generation American, son of Chinese immigrants who worked the railroads. He earned his badge through sheer competence and a mind that works like a steel trap, remembers every detail, every face, every inconsistency. He carries a leather notebook everywhere, writes in it constantly with a mechanical pencil he imported from Germany. His handwriting is immaculate, precise as clockwork. They're met at the station by Deputy Ranger Foster, who looks like he hasn't slept in days. His eyes are bloodshot, his uniform rumpled, and there's a tremor in his hands that wasn't there 2 weeks ago. "Marshals," Foster says, his voice hoarse. "Thank God you're here." Garrett notices something immediately. Foster keeps glancing over his shoulder. Not the casual awareness of a lawman. This is fear. Raw, animal fear. "Take us to where you found the badges," Garrett says. Foster nods, but he doesn't move right away. Just stands there, staring at nothing. "Mr. Foster?" Chen prompts gently. "It's just—" Foster starts, then stops. Swallows hard. "Nobody wants to go back there. To the creek. The men I took with me, the search party, half of them have left town. Packed up their families and left. Won't say why. Just left." "Why?" Garrett asks. Foster looks at him. Really looks at him. And Garrett sees something in those eyes that makes his skin prickle. "Because they felt it too," Foster whispers. "That we weren't alone out there." They ride out the next morning at first light, 6 men total, the 2 marshals, Foster, and 3 local volunteers, hardened frontiersmen who agreed to guide them for double pay. Even then, Garrett notices, they all carry more ammunition than seems necessary. Rifles, sidearms, some with hunting knives strapped to their belts. Like they're preparing for war, not a crime scene investigation. The journey takes most of the day. The terrain is brutal. Steep climbs, narrow passes, stretches where they have to dismount and lead the horses carefully over loose rock. The forest presses close, dense pine and spruce that blocks out most of the sunlight. By noon, even though it's not cold, Garrett finds himself shivering. Chen feels it too. Garrett watches his partner's hand drift to his sidearm repeatedly, an unconscious gesture. The notebook stays in his pocket. Nothing to write yet. Just the oppressive silence of the forest and the sound of horses' hooves on stone. They reach Blackwater Creek at 3 in the afternoon. The place feels wrong immediately. Garrett has been to countless crime scenes, seen death in every form, and he's developed an instinct for places where violence has occurred. There's an atmosphere, a residue that lingers. This creek has that feeling, magnified 100-fold. The water runs black, not dirty, just dark, like it's pulling light into itself rather than reflecting it. The banks are steep, covered in smooth river stones that clack together with an oddly musical sound when disturbed. The air smells of minerals and decay, though there's nothing visibly rotting. Foster points to the section of creek where Ridley found the badges. Right there, scattered along about 30 yards. Chen immediately begins documenting. He sketches the scene, measures distances, takes notes about water depth, current speed, surrounding vegetation. Professional. Thorough. But Garrett notices his partner's handwriting is shakier than usual. Garrett wades into the water, feeling the cold seep through his boots. He searches the creek bed methodically, running his hands through the stones, looking for anything the initial search might have missed. He finds something. Not a badge, something else. Small, metallic, wedged between two rocks. A button. Brass, with the park ranger insignia stamped into it. Then another, and another. Within 20 minutes, Garrett has collected 43 buttons, the kind used on ranger uniforms. All of them showing no signs of weathering, no corrosion, despite being submerged. Like the badges, they're pristine, impossibly clean. There's more. One of the local guides, a man named Jackson, calls from upstream. His voice is tight, strained. They find him standing on the bank, pointing at something in the water. Not buttons this time. Teeth. Human teeth. Dozens of them, scattered across the creek bed like white pebbles. Chen kneels down, examines them closely. Molars, incisors, canines. Different sizes, from different people. His voice is clinical, detached, but Garrett knows his partner well enough to hear the fear underneath. How many people? Garrett asks. Chen counts silently, his lips moving. Based on the variety, at least 15 to 20 individuals. Garrett's blood runs cold. That's almost all of them. Marshall, Foster says quietly, look at this. He's found something carved into a tree trunk, about 7 feet off the ground. Fresh carving, the wood inside still pale. Sap, still bleeding from the cuts. A message, 3 words, carved in panicked, irregular letters. They made us. Made them what? Chen asks. No one answers. Because none of them want to imagine what could make 22 armed men do anything against their will. Back at the ranger station, Garrett and Chen spread out everything they've collected. Badges, buttons, teeth, and the items Foster had already catalogued. Holloway's hat with the spinning compass, various personal effects found scattered in impossible locations. Chen works by lamplight, examining each piece with a magnifying glass. Garrett watches him work, then turns his attention to Holloway's journal. He reads it cover to cover. Most of it is mundane, patrol logs, supply inventories, weather observations. But there are anomalies. Small things that add up to something disturbing. June 12th. Webb reported seeing lights in the forest last night, moving lights at ground level that don't behave like fire. He wanted to investigate. I forbade it. July 3rd. Miguel Cordova swears he heard singing yesterday near Iron Peak. Said it sounded like children. There are no settlements within 40 miles. July 19th. 3 horses died last night. No signs of injury, no signs of illness. The veterinarian from Milner's Junction examined them and found nothing wrong. They simply stopped. Bear thinks we should move the station. I'm beginning to agree. August 10th. I saw it today. I don't know what else to call it. A figure in the trees watching us. Too tall to be human, too still to be alive. When I looked directly at it, it wasn't there. But in my peripheral vision, I could see it clearly. Watching, always watching. August 15th. The men are scared. They won't admit it, but I can see it. The way they group together now, never patrol alone even when ordered. The way they check the tree line constantly. Something is out there. I no longer dismiss Webb's concerns. I no longer think Bear is superstitious. I think we're all in danger, and I don't know what to do about it. The final entry, August 31st, is the one Foster had read before. Webb insists we're being watched. I told him it's his imagination. But tonight, for the first time, I think I believe him. The tree line looks different, darker, like it's moved closer to the station while we weren't looking. Garrett closes the journal, looks at Chen, who stopped his examination and is staring at nothing, his face pale. "What is it?" Garrett asks. Chen holds up one of the teeth. "This one has gold filling work, expensive dental work, the kind you'd only see in a major city. I checked the ranger roster. Thomas Green, one of the younger rangers, his file mentions he came from a wealthy Boston family. So I compared it to the description of Green in his recruitment paperwork. The gold filling should be on the upper right second molar. This tooth." Chen pauses. "This is a lower left canine, but it has the exact same gold work, the same distinctive pattern." Garrett doesn't understand immediately. Then it hits him. "Someone moved the filling," he says slowly, "from one tooth to another." "That's not possible," Chen says. "You can't transplant dental work like that. The tooth would reject it, infection would set in. And why would anyone even try?" They sit in silence, the lamplight casting long shadows across the walls. Outside, night has fallen completely. The forest is absolutely silent. No crickets, no owls, no sounds at all. "There's something else," Chen says quietly. He pulls out his notebook, flips to a page covered in calculations. "I've been tracking the locations where evidence was found. The badges at the creek, Holloway's hat at Widow's Point, a canteen found by another search party near Iron Peak, personal items scattered across miles of wilderness." He spreads out a map, marks each location with a pin. "Look at the pattern." Garrett looks. At first, he sees nothing. Then he shifts his angle, and his breath catches. The locations form a shape, not random at all. A perfect circle, roughly 5 miles in diameter, centered on a point deep in the reserve's interior. A place called Devil's Hollow. "That's impossible," Garrett says. "For the evidence to be arranged in a perfect geometric pattern, someone would have to have placed it deliberately. But the search parties found these items over the course of 2 weeks in different areas, by chance." "I know," Chen says, "which means either this is the most elaborate hoax in history, or—" He trails off. "Or what?" Chen looks at him. "Or something arranged it for us to find. Something that wanted us to see the pattern, wanted us to go to Devil's Hollow." Over the next 3 days, Garrett and Chen interview everyone connected to the case. Thomas Ridley, the fisherman who found the badges, the members of Foster's search parties, townspeople from Milner's Junction, anyone who might have information. The testimonies are disturbing, consistent in their inconsistency. Sarah Holloway, the captain's wife, tells them her husband had changed in the months before the disappearance. "He stopped sleeping," she says. "He'd stand at the window all night, watching. When I asked what he was looking for, he'd just say, 'Making sure they're still out there.' I asked who. He never answered." A supply runner named Marcus tells them about his last delivery to the ranger station 3 days before the patrol. The rangers were all gathered in the main room, not talking, just standing, staring at the wall, all of them at the same time. I asked if they were okay, and Captain Holloway turned around and smiled at me. But his eyes were empty, like he wasn't really there anymore. A local trapper named Red Dog, a half-Shoshone man who knows the reserve better than anyone, refuses to speak at first. Only after Garrett promises him protection does he talk. "The hollow is forbidden," Red Dog says. "Has been for longer than the white man has been here. Longer than my people have been here, and we've been here 10,000 years. It's old, older than humans. The ground there is wrong. Animals won't enter it. Birds won't fly over it. In winter, snow won't fall there. In summer, nothing grows. What's in the hollow? Garrett asks. Red Dog looks at him with eyes that have seen too much. A door, he says simply. And sometimes, the door opens. September 28th. 1 week into the federal investigation. Garrett and Chen sit in their rented room above the Milner's Junction General Store, reviewing everything they know. The evidence, the testimonies, the impossible patterns. We have to go to Devil's Hollow, Chen says. Garrett nods slowly. He knew it would come to this. We'll need men, armed men. No one in town will go, Chen points out. They're terrified. Then we go alone. Chen looks at him. That's suicide. Maybe, Garrett agrees. But 22 men are missing. We're federal marshals. This is what we do. They spend the rest of the night preparing, check their weapons, pack supplies, write letters to be sent in case they don't return. Professional preparations for an unprofessional situation. At dawn, they ride out. Just the two of them, following the map that shows the center of the circle, the heart of the mystery. Devil's Hollow. Foster watches them go from the ranger station porch. He's holding something in his hands, Holloway's journal, which he's been reading obsessively. As the marshals disappear into the forest, Foster opens to a page he didn't show them. A page near the back, written in handwriting that doesn't match Holloway's. It's dated September 2nd, the second day of the patrol, after they should have already been deep in the wilderness, out of reach of the station. The message is simple, repeated over and over, filling the entire page in increasingly frantic script. We walked in circles. We walked in circles. We walked in circles. The trees moved behind us. We can never leave. Foster closes the journal, watches the forest where the marshals disappeared, and wonders if he'll ever see them again. October 1st, 1891. 3 days into Garrett and Chen's expedition. They should have reached Devil's Hollow in 2 days. The map was clear, the distance calculable, the terrain, while difficult, navigable for experienced riders. But here they are, 72 hours later, and the landscape around them looks exactly the same as it did yesterday, and the day before. Chen noticed it first. He's been marking trees with his knife as they pass, small cuts in the bark to track their progress. This morning, they passed the same marked tree for the 3rd time. We're going in circles, Chen says, his voice tight. Garrett wants to argue, but he can't. He's felt it too. That subtle wrongness, like the forest is rearranging itself when they're not looking. Paths that should lead north somehow curve back south. Landmarks that should be to their left appear on their right. The sun moves across the sky, but its position never quite makes sense. This is what Holloway's hidden journal entry meant. The Rangers had experienced this too. We stop here, Garrett decides. Make camp, reassess in the morning. They set up a basic camp in a small clearing. Build a fire, though the wood burns strangely. The flames are the right color, produce heat, but cast shadows that seem too long, too dark. Chen boils coffee, but when they drink it, it tastes like dirt and copper. Neither man sleeps. They sit back to back, rifles across their laps, watching the tree line. At 2:47 a.m., Chen checks his pocket watch obsessively. They hear it. Singing. Children's voices, high and sweet, coming from somewhere deep in the forest. A melody neither man recognizes, in a language that sounds almost familiar, but isn't quite anything they've ever heard. The singing is beautiful and horrible at the same time, like innocence corrupted into something unnatural. Should we investigate? Chen whispers. No, Garrett says immediately. He remembers Holloway's journal. Miguel Cordova heard singing near Iron Peak. We stay here. We don't move. The singing continues for 17 minutes, then stops abruptly, cut off mid-note. The silence that follows is worse. Dawn breaks, or what passes for dawn in this place. The light is gray, diffuse, coming from no particular direction. The forest looks different than it did last night, though neither Marshall can quite articulate how. Chen is checking his compass when he freezes. "Marshall, look at this." The compass needle is spinning, slowly, steadily, clockwise. Just like the one they found in Holloway's hat. "We're close," Garrett says. "The hollow. We have to be close." They abandon the horses. The animals are terrified anyway, pulling at their reins, eyes rolling white. Garrett and Chen proceed on foot, moving carefully through underbrush that seems to resist them, branches that catch at their clothes like grasping fingers. Then the trees end, abruptly, unnaturally. One moment they're in dense forest, the next they're standing at the edge of a clearing that shouldn't exist. Devil's Hollow. It's a depression in the earth, roughly circular, maybe 300 feet in diameter. But calling it a depression doesn't capture the wrongness of it. The ground doesn't slope gradually, it drops off sharply, like something carved a perfect bowl out of the landscape. And Chen was right. Nothing grows here. The soil is black, but not the rich black of fertile earth. This is the black of ash, of char, of something burned so thoroughly that nothing will ever grow again. The air above the hollow shimmers like heat waves, though the temperature is cold. At the center of the hollow stands a structure. Not a building. Not exactly. It's made of stone, huge blocks of black rock, stacked in a configuration that hurts to look at. The angles are wrong. The proportions are impossible. Looking at it too long makes Garrett's eyes water, makes his head pound. "That wasn't on any map," Chen says. "No," Garrett agrees. "It wasn't." They descend into the hollow. The moment their feet touch the black soil, something changes. The sound of the forest, already muted, cuts off completely. Absolute silence. Even their footsteps make no noise. As they approach the structure, Garrett sees something that makes his stomach clench. Equipment, ranger equipment, saddles, bedrolls, rifles, personal belongings. All of it arranged in neat piles around the perimeter of the structure, like offerings at an altar. And something else. Uniforms. 22 ranger uniforms, folded precisely, stacked in a pyramid. But they're empty. No bodies. Just the clothes, arranged with disturbing care. Chen picks up one of the uniforms, examines it. No blood. No tears. No signs of struggle. It's like they just took them off and folded them. Or something took them off, Garrett says quietly. They circle the structure. There's an opening on the eastern side, not a door, just a gap in the stone, a darkness that seems deeper than shadow should be. Garrett draws his revolver. "We have to go in." Chen nods, though his face is pale, his hands shaking. "I know." They enter the structure. The interior is larger than it should be. Impossibly larger. The outside suggested a space maybe 20 feet across. Inside, the walls stretch away into darkness, the ceiling lost somewhere above them. Their eyes adjust slowly. The darkness isn't complete. There's a faint phosphorescence coming from the walls themselves, a sickly green glow that provides just enough light to see. The walls are covered in carvings, thousands of them, millions maybe, covering every surface. Not writing exactly. Symbols, patterns, images of things that might be human but aren't quite right. Too many limbs, faces in wrong places, bodies that twist in ways bodies shouldn't twist. And among the carvings, Garrett sees something that stops him cold. Handprints. Human handprints. Fresh ones, pressed into the stone as if the rock was soft clay. He counts them. 22 distinct handprints, all different sizes, all belonging to different people. Below the handprints, carved in the same panicked letters they saw on the tree at Blackwater Creek, a message. "We touched it. It touched back. We understood. We can't go back." "Marshall," Chen calls from deeper in the structure. His voice sounds strange, echoing wrong, coming from too many directions at once. Garrett finds him standing before what can only be described as an altar. A massive stone slab, smooth and black, set at the exact center of the chamber. And on the altar, arranged in a circle, 22 objects. Skulls, human skulls, polished to a mirror shine, positioned so they all face outward, toward the entrance. Chen is examining them with his analytical mind, even as his hands shake. All adult males, all showing signs of modification. What kind of modification? Chen points. The bone structure has been altered, holes drilled in precise patterns, symbols carved into the cranium. And look at this. He tilts one skull so Garrett can see the interior. The inside of the skull has been engraved, thousands of tiny marks covering every surface. Why? Garrett asks, though he's not sure he wants to know. I think... Chen pauses, his scientific mind struggling with an unscientific conclusion. I think something was writing on them, recording information, using their skulls as pages in a book. Garrett feels bile rise in his throat. He thinks of Holloway, Webb, Bear, all the Rangers he's read about in the reports. Good men, brave men, reduced to nothing but writing surfaces for something incomprehensible. Then he hears it, a sound that makes every hair on his body stand up. Breathing. Heavy, wet breathing, coming from the darkness beyond the altar. Something is in here with them. The darkness moves. Not like a living thing walking, the darkness itself moves, flowing forward like liquid shadow, and within it, shapes begin to form. Tall shapes, too tall, with too many angles, too many joints. Things that might once have been human might still be human in some terrible, transformed way. Garrett fires his revolver. The sound is deafening in the enclosed space, the muzzle flash illuminating the chamber for a split second. In that moment of light, he sees them clearly. The Rangers, all 22 of them. But changed. God, how they've changed. Their skin is translucent now, stretched tight over bones that have been rearranged, reformed. Their faces are still recognizable. There's Holloway, there's Webb, there's Bear. But their expressions are wrong, fixed in something between ecstasy and agony. Their eyes are black, completely black, reflecting nothing. They're moving in perfect synchronization, like puppets controlled by a single hand. And they're not attacking. They're reaching out, hands extended, palms up, in a gesture that might be pleading or offering or beckoning. Their mouths open, all 22 mouths, at the exact same moment. And they speak. One voice, coming from 22 throats. We understand now. We see. We serve. You will too. Chen is backing away, his gun forgotten, his notebook dropped on the ground. What did this to them? He whispers. As if in answer, something else emerges from the darkness behind the transformed Rangers. Garrett's mind struggles to process what he's seeing. His eyes tell him one thing. His brain interprets it as something else entirely, and the gap between perception and understanding is so vast he feels something crack in his psyche. It's not a creature, not exactly. It's more like a space where reality has been damaged, where the normal rules of existence have been suspended. A wound in the world. And through that wound, something is looking through. Something vast. Something ancient. Something that has been here in this spot, long before humans walked the earth. The structure wasn't built to worship it. The structure was built to contain it, to mark it, to warn others away. But the Rangers hadn't known. They'd come to Devil's Hollow, found the structure, and in their curiosity, they'd touched it, and it had touched back. Stay, the Rangers say in unison. Understand, serve, or run. But tell them we're waiting. Garrett makes a decision. He grabs Chen's arm and runs. They burst out of the structure into the gray light of Devil's Hollow. Behind them they hear that unified voice, 22 throats speaking as one. Tell them we're happy. They run, blind, panicked, all training forgotten. They scramble up the sides of the hollow, the black soil crumbling under their boots. Behind them, they can hear footsteps, measured, patient, unhurried. The transformed rangers aren't chasing them. They're following. There's a difference. Garrett and Chen crash into the forest, and suddenly, miraculously, the world snaps back into place. The trees are just trees. The paths make sense. The compass Chen drops in his terror spins once, then points steadily north. They find their horses exactly where they left them. The animals bolt the moment they're mounted, needing no urging, as if they can smell the hollow's corruption on their riders. They ride for 3 days straight, stopping only when the horses physically cannot continue. Neither man speaks, neither man sleeps. They just ride, putting distance between themselves and Devil's Hollow, knowing somehow that distance means nothing to what they left behind. October 8th, 1891. Federal Marshal William Garrett files his official report from Denver, Colorado. The report is concise, factual, and completely fabricated. According to the official record, the 22 Rangers were killed by a combination of exposure, wildlife attacks, and a catastrophic rock slide near Iron Peak. The evidence found at Blackwater Creek, badges, buttons, teeth, is attributed to scavengers disturbing the bodies and carrying remains to the creek. The investigation is closed. Case solved. Garrett includes a recommendation that Devil's Hollow be permanently restricted from public access, citing geological instability. He suggests the entire northern sector of Greystone Reserve be closed to civilian entry. His recommendation is approved without question. The same day, Deputy Marshal James Chen submits his resignation from federal service. He cites health reasons. In reality, he will spend the next 30 years in a sanatorium in Vermont, painting the same image over and over, 22 faces screaming in silent unity, with black eyes that see everything. Garrett continues as a marshal for another decade, but those who work with him notice changes. He never works cases in wilderness areas again. He refuses assignments in national parks. He sleeps with a lamp lit, always. And on certain nights, when the moon is dark and the wind is still, he wakes up hearing a voice, 22 voices speaking as one, calling to him from somewhere far away. Come back. Understand? Serve. October 15th, 1891. A memorial service is held at Milner's Junction for the 22 lost Rangers. 22 empty coffins are buried in the town cemetery. 22 headstones, each bearing a name, a date, and the inscription, "Died in service to the preservation of nature." The families weep. The town mourns. The story becomes legend. The tragedy of the Rangers who vanished in the wilderness, victims of the frontier's brutal indifference. But Deputy Ranger Foster knows better. He attended the service, stood at the back, said nothing. That night, he burns Holloway's journal, every page. He watches the flames consume the truth, knowing that some knowledge is too dangerous to preserve. Before he burns the last page, he reads the final entry one more time. The one written in that wrong handwriting, the one that doesn't match Holloway's script. The entry is dated October 7th, 1891. 6 days ago. 5 days after Garrett and Chen escaped Devil's Hollow. The message is simple. 22 served willingly. 2 more understood, but ran how many more will come. We wait, we are patient. The door is always open. Foster burns the page, watches the paper curl and blacken and disappear. But he knows, in his bones, in his soul, he knows. The Rangers aren't dead. They're still out there, in Devil's Hollow, serving something that shouldn't exist, transformed into something that isn't quite human anymore. And they're waiting for the next patrol. The next curious explorer. The next person who touches what shouldn't be touched. The door is always open, and it's always hungry. Final note. In 1892, Greystone National Reserve is officially redesignated. The northern sector, including Devil's Hollow, is permanently closed to the public. Official reason: environmental protection. In 1903, the entire structure in Devil's Hollow is dynamited by Army Corps of Engineers. Official reason: safety hazard. In 1911, a group of surveyors report finding the structure still standing, completely undamaged. They are dismissed as unreliable witnesses. In 1945, during a military training exercise, a platoon of soldiers enters Devil's Hollow. 17 men emerge. They can't explain what happened to the other 8. They won't speak about what they saw. In 1967, Devil's Hollow is fenced off with chain link and barbed wire. Warning signs are posted every 50 feet. Restricted area, no trespassing. Violators will be prosecuted. In 1989, a hiker ignores the warnings. His camera is found 6 months later, at the bottom of Blackwater Creek. The last photo on the roll shows a clearing with a dark structure in the center. And in the photograph, barely visible in the shadows around the structure, 22 figures standing in a perfect circle. Their eyes are black. Their mouths are open. And if you look closely, if you really look, you can see that they're smiling. The 22 Rangers vanished in September 1891. Their badges were found in Blackwater Creek. But the Rangers themselves? They never left Devil's Hollow. And according to the last reports from hikers who ventured too close to the restricted zone, sometimes, on quiet nights when the moon is dark, you can still hear them singing. 22 voices in perfect harmony, waiting for someone new to join their choir. End.